And we're live to review first episode of season 5 of Homicide, and we're going to try to mention MBTI as much as possible, take advantage of Jeff's knowledge of the artisan temperament, so that's the SP as an MBTI. Jeff is a member of the SP grouping himself. He's a huge fan of Homicide Life on the Street, so he's the right person to combine these two topics of MBTI types, especially the sensing types and knowledge of this program. So this is the place to be, folks, if you want MBTI and Homicide Life on the Street. So over to his Jeffness, Jeff, the SP Spasmiller.
What an intro. Okay, so we're starting a new era of Homicide, season 5, with a new opening and all. This episode is called Hostage, Part 1, written by James Yoshimura, Tom Fontana, and Julie Martin, and directed by Ted Demme. It originally aired September 20th, 1996. And I'm going to go straight to the David B. 226 Morris review, because there's not really a good recap, but he basically explains most of what happens anyway, so. Here we go. The first great moment of Season 5 occurs 15 minutes into Hostage Part 1, when Francis Xavier Pimbleton very slowly gets out of his car and begins deliberately walking up the stairs to the squad, to the cowboy junkies, this street, that man, this life. By now, everyone in the squad has been waiting for Frank to come back. A lot of the brass in the department are pissed that Frank is returning to the homicide unit. Barnfather and Gaffney mask their concern for the unit by showing apprehension for Frank's well-being, especially if the tensions of the job get to him. Somehow I don't think Gaffney would mind if Frank did drop dead. But the most surprising source of hostility comes from Detective Munch. Part of this comes from the fact that Frank showed no compassion for Stan's shooting by coming to the hospital. Part of this is because he knows that no one would bend over backward for him if he had a stroke. But most of it is simple hurt of the fact that he calls Frank's home dozens of times while he was recovering, and Frank didn't bother to return one. When Munch confronts him with this, Frank sheepishly admits that he didn't think that it mattered to him. But Frank has enough problems without Munch. He stumbles over words frequently, he has memory blocks over simple words and spelling, and he sweats profusely after a brief walk. His mind and body have been fractured, but his will is still strong. He wants to get back on the job, but the department has other plans. They demand that Frank qualify on the range before he can return to work. Until then, he is limited to half days spent doing administrative work and answering phones. Frank's furious about this, but G, who has called in every favor he can to get Frank back, is adamant. When Frank enters the squad room for the first time, for a moment everyone stops working and goes quiet. But this is Homicide, and instants later everyone's back to work, and there's a lot going on. With Frank chained to his desk, Russert running off to Paris with a French diplomat, and Bolander officially retired, the squad is busy. Bayless and Munch are called out on an investigation into the murder of a woman in her house, the only witness to the crime, a pig. While they're out on this, the rest of the squad is called onto a red ball case of a man taking hostages at a middle school. Though there are bodies on the ground, because there are live victims, QRT is put in charge. They are more concerned with saving the hostages than the already dead bodies, leaving the detective scrambling. It is not until near the episode's end that the shooter makes his first demand. He wants beer. The scenes at the school are unnerving, more so since they were filmed nearly 3 years before similar shootings would take place in Columbine. There's a lot going on in this episode, but unlike the opening of Season 4, most of the action is character-driven. As always, Andre Braugher dominates the proceedings. Given a chance to show Frank Pimbleton as much less than invincible, he does a brilliant job, particularly in scenes where he struggles to remember such mundane words as copy machine and pizza. He repeatedly tries to tell G and Bayless that he's still the same man, but it is very clear that he is not entirely. Despite this, however, he wants to get back on the street, so he heads toward the firing range. Unfortunately, it becomes clear that Frank, who was a lousy shot before his stroke, has a long way to go here, too.
Yeah, especially if you're just using a single grip.
Just as impressive, however, is the now clean-shaven, short-haired Kyle Secor. In his murder investigation, he shows that he is a long way from the rookie who worked these streets 4 years ago. Even more telling are his scenes with Brower. His first scene with him, where he tries to embrace Frank to the latter's extreme discomfort, is very critical in showing both men's character. Tim tries to show compassion and concern for his partner, only to be spurned by him. Similarly, when Frank tries to help Tim with his murder, Bayless turns him away and asks him to take his medicine. These are small things, but fractures are appearing in Tim and Frank's relationship. The other actors, with the exception of Belzer, don't get a lot of face time, but there are very memorable small scenes, such as when Eldrick discusses the bad karma that is associated with Bolander's desk, and is pissed when Mike mentions he's sitting at a dead man's desk also. There is also some humor as Bayless and Munch find themselves trying to learn about the breeding of a pig. The most unsettling scene, however, occurs at the school when Brody tapes the reactions of the kids. As one girl watches her classmate's wounded body being taken away, she assumes that the camera's presence makes this a movie, and that what she just witnessed wasn't real. When this illusion is shattered, she seems even more devastated than by the shooting itself. One shows that Homicide still has its A game. There are a lot more risks being taken than before, and the end result is, like the best television, impressive indeed. My score 9. And before I turn it over to Ben for his thoughts, I was going to say that mentioned with Bayless sort of, tending to Frank. I'd say in related to your opening about pointing out personality types. This was a scene where you can clearly see Bayless taking his natural protector role as an ISFJ, and because this is his partner who's had a stroke and is just coming back, and everything about what he's doing is focused on tending to what he thinks are Frank's needs, regardless of what Frank actually says. Bayless is focused on what does he need to do to help take care of Frank.
Yeah. So I think that with Bayless, it's pretty clear, either ISFJ or ESFJ. And I think that's fair enough, Jeff. SFJ for Bayless.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, if you go by the Kersey roles, that he seems to fit the protector role more often than the provider role, in my opinion. But
right. Okay. Right. Now, I had been complaining about the dialogue being a little bit dull. This dialogue was, they were trying to get better, trying to get back to the season 1 type dialogue. Sometimes it felt a little bit too forced, a little bit too slick, like kind of TV dialogue. So I know I'm being a little bit of a hard to please so-and-so here, where I want it to sound real, but I do want it to sound snappy at the same time and be like good. So it's sometimes I actually quite like the Nash Bridges joke. I don't know if Jeff liked it.
I said I thought that was a little bit forced, but it's kind of funny they throw that in there. But I think it was a little bit clumsily delivered in that scene, because it was the scene about Frank coming back. It was sort of like they couldn't make up their mind how they wanted to play it exactly, whether it was humorous or serious, and it kind of had an awkward way to me. But
I like that scene, the opening scene.
But yeah, I did thought about what you said about the dialogue when they had the scene after Bayless first took the call, and he was they were trying to figure out whether Munch or Lewis was going to go with him, and the kind of back and forth where they were saying like, "Who's going? I'm going. I'm going. You going? Who's going? Let's go." When that happened, I was thinking that yeah, you might get a little bit of your wish when it comes to the dialogue being a little bit closer to the first season kind of exchanges that they had.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I really am like hard to please in this area where it's like, in other words, what I want, folks, is I want it witty but real. I don't want it to sound like TV dialogue, but I do want it to be witty. So, and that can be hard to do.
Yeah. I think there was definitely some of that though, like in the scene where they were talking about the bundt cake versus donuts, and
yeah, that was good.
Lewis,
that was good.
Said, I'm not here on this earth to make life a la carte for you.
Yeah.
And
That was good.
And that was another, scene where you could see Bayless makes the comments about the bun cake too, but then you could still tell his mind isn't really on that because he's still thinking about Frank. That's where his focus is.
Yeah. And also, what I don't like is also I don't want characters all to be witty in the same way, because then I'm hearing the writer rather than the characters. Ideally, I want the characters to be funny in their own way, and we sort of got that maybe in like the first episode of Homicide, where Lewis in particular would be like funny in his own way, in the Lewis way, and just people being funny in their own way. So you don't hear the writer, you hear the characters. And we had that, of course, with Cressetti as well, who was funny in his own way. Oh yes, I was thinking throughout this episode, where's the hostage negotiator? Are they setting it up for Frank to come in? That's what I was thinking. Because there's no hostage negotiator. There's that woman. Is she really the hostage negotiator? Because where's...
Yeah, it does seem a little bit haphazard, for sure.
I mean, it's like they have them. They have... I mean,
it does seem that she was supposed to be that person, but she doesn't seem to be all that great.
No, because she was a bit cantankerous.
Which was maybe the point they were trying to make, that they weren't very prepared for that.
Yeah, I mean, it should be like... I mean, I would say, like, okay...
yeah, remember... Ben,
just let one kid go. Just one kid.
Yeah, cause you may not know since you got your two screens there, but you just had a picture of Bayless on the phone this whole time, so you might want to change it up a little bit.
What I was about to say is, I've seen a recent picture of Kyle Seacole, and I think he's a little bit thinner in the face. I think he maybe put some weight on this season.
Maybe so.
Now we don't know. Maybe he did it for the part. Because some actors are like that, they are good enough to like change their physique. Because he certainly shaved his hair down.
Yep.
So, because maybe the actor was thinking, because he may have been like this: hey, I don't want to be known as a pretty boy actor. Maybe I'll cut my hair really short and put on a little bit of weight. You know what I mean? I mean, because he is, because you can imagine like some actors being sick of hearing that all the while, of being talked at in those terms, and if they have enough discipline over their body, they can like change how they look, things like that. '90s fashions, very baggy, very baggy. It's like very, very baggy stuff. Right. Yeah, I thought the kids were good in this. There was no bad acting from the kids. Because a lot of times in American programs, especially in sitcoms, the kids sound horrible. They have these horrible, whiny voices. And I've not really heard anyone like that in Homicide yet. Horrible, whiny American kids. You can sometimes get in American, and they sound like this, "Mammy!" and they have that horrible voice. Ugh. Right. But these are like these are good kids, realistic kids. Because they're probably this stuff was a bit, again, just me being picky with the dialogue. Yes, nice try for try to get it more real. Don't trying too hard, I would say. Oh yes, this woman. So in 1996, she said it cost $10, and Haley would be saying that's too much, because she like pays like $5 for a top from the thrift store. Right. So Haley, folks, is Little Miss Harbour. Right. This guy had a very interesting voice. I just wonder do you think this is a person from real life or just a fantastic character actor? I think it's a real person. What do you think, Jeff?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, do you think it was just like some guy playing himself or a proper actor?
I don't know how much he is like that. I mean, I don't know the actor, so I can't say.
Okay.
But I mean, I would say that he was believable as the character to me.
Yeah. I just liked his voice. It's very interesting. Oh yes, and I was wondering when they're going through this area here, was this like supposed to be like the southern Baltimore, the area that's a bit more like, is it Virginia that's beneath Baltimore?
Yeah, well, yeah, Munch refers to it as Pigtown because that's what they actually call that section of Baltimore. And in fact, they've had like other people tried to get away from that image and call it other things, and the people there clung to the Pigtown thing. They liked that better than any of the other stuff people called them. So.
You know what? Now, when Frank was going up here, I thought what he might do was initially go up with the rail, and then his pride would make him want to go up in the middle. But
that's actually one of my favorite scenes, and I think they did a really perfect music choice for that.
Yeah.
And I think he doesn't get to the point where he can think about going up the middle because there's a point at which he stops. And
yeah,
I like the fact that there's no we don't hear any kind of voiceover monologue or anything like that. We don't know exactly what Frank's thinking or going through his mind. So you have the opportunity to think that could be for different reasons.
Yeah, that's good.
It could be that he's thinking, well, do I really want to keep going up these stairs? It could be that he momentarily forgot how to go up the stairs. It could just be that he's tired, needs to take a breath. I mean, there's different reasons why he could have stopped on his way up.
Yeah.
But it doesn't appear that he could go up the middle because he's struggling with it for whatever reason.
I think maybe what I would have done is I would have had him go up the side, go towards the middle, and then go towards the side again. So, I would think that he would maybe try to go up the middle.
And he would get wobbly and have to go back to the side.
Yeah. Although that may have been doing it a little bit too much, but okay, it was fine the way they did it. It was just like
that's what I love about it is that it's the subtlety of it. It's not over dramatic. It's very understated, even though they still have the music playing and stuff. It's a very dramatic scene, but at the same time, not over dramatic because you feel the, everything that's going into it and his returning.
Yeah. I still lay odds that I think Frank is a favourite to be the hostage negotiator in the next episode.
Well, it's funny you say that because I think, I won't spoil it. I'll just say that Frank does in a way get involved in the hostage plot line, but it's maybe not in the way you might think. So I'll just leave it
good. And I like the detail. I don't know what it is, but this actor, Andre Braugher, tends not to be as well lit as Japhet Kotto, even though they have the same shade of skin. It's got the sweat there under his armpits.
Well, he is shorter than Kotto is. That could have an effect on it in terms of the height of the camera or whatever, the lighting. He's not as tall.
No. You know what I noticed? This was the first time I actually noticed that this guy actually sounds a little bit like Andre Braugher.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
I actually was impressed with him, the character, in these scenes, because we've seen a lot of Barnfather as being, he's a little bit of a wishy-washy politician type.
Yeah.
And in this one, he really showed why. Kind of maybe you get an idea of why he got to that position in terms of not just the politics of it, but that when he's in a situation where he has to take charge and manage people from different departments, he asserts his authority well. So
yeah, that's good because we have to believe that he's in that position.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like you mentioned, the hostage negotiator woman doesn't seem like she's really that great at her job, but everybody else seems like they're doing the best they can. They're just a little bit flustered as to what it is they need to do, but Barnfather is consistent in terms of his authority in managing everybody. So,
and of course, this guy is the real D, isn't he? The real guy.
Yep, that's Gary Diodario, the real former lieutenant of the Homicide Department. in Baltimore.
And then we can. Yeah, I think he's put some weight on there. This guy. I think that, what do they call this? A Cody coat? What this thing here? Because I remember seeing a Fox Extra about this. It's made in the United States.
I don't ever know what that thing is called, but I've certainly seen plenty of them in my life.
I think it's called a something coupe.
Okay.
Right. Oh yeah, Frank missing the target. You know, why not do the double grip? Why can't he do the double grip shoot? But he has to be so SP. He won't do the double grip. We've got to do the double grip. Oh yeah.
And I was going to say, you get that brief shot of the teacher at the end there, and the lady who plays that part, I believe her name is, her husband has already appeared on Homicide previously, and that's Jerry Stiller.
Oh.
Yes, Jerry Stiller and Ann Mara, the parents of Ben Stiller.
Oh. Now, so was Anya Epstein new to the program as well?
No, she had been on it before already. Right. I think maybe she got a slightly increased role, but he was credited as a co-writer on at least one episode before this.
Right. Right, and that's it. That's it. Right. What else is there to say? Oh yes.
So
yeah, go on.
Oh, I was just going to ask, because since I was reading the description of the episode, I didn't see if you showed the pictures of the opening titles.
Oh yeah, yeah, I went through them. What I would say about the opening titles is, what I do like about them is the fact that what we got here, that it puts the name of the actor or actress next to them. So I like that. I think that like stuff like this, I wouldn't have had that. I would have had more stuff showing Baltimore, sites around Baltimore, because it's not a well-known city like, say, New York. I mean, you don't need to show, but I would have shown areas of Baltimore, the different areas.
Without any particular behind-the-scenes knowledge of their choices for this, I can only gather that they were trying to sort of change the image of the show a little bit, and it was already really popular in Baltimore, so they didn't really feel like they needed to feature Baltimore as much as they did featuring cop show stuff. They wanted to try to kind of get that angle by showing this stuff and things about the actual detective work and police procedures and stuff like that. So I think that's my guess as to what their intention was with doing those things.
Do you think it might be because this is like the first time I've seen it, and subsequently lots of American crime shows have this type of opening?
Yeah, and I'm not actually sure at this point, because I don't really remember any. I don't remember if there was a show, because this was before CSI and shows like that. So I don't know how many had done anything like this in the opening, if any. It may have been the first. So it may have actually been.
You know what it might be? There was a similar opening to the film. The film with Brad Pitt in and Morgan Freeman, the Head in a Box film. Oh, I hope I've not spoilt it for everybody, but that's what they called it, the Head in the Box film. Fantastic extras on that film. The Seven. That's it, Seven. Have you seen that film, Jeff?
No, I never did.
Oh yeah, it's got Kevin Spacey in it as well as the criminal. But yeah, Seven, and on the DVD, that was all very much like this, where and I think they're taking it from there, where you would have these captions on screen and they would like shake on screen, that kind of thing, very much like that. because that DVD, folks, is fantastic. That is like you get your money's worth with the DVD of 7 because you have 4 commentaries, and yeah, there was a whole featurette on there about how they did the intro sequence, and the film 7 came out in 1995, so I think they were influenced by that, and I think that all your CSI ones were influenced by that as well.
Maybe so.
I don't know. Yeah. But what I liked about the first intro, and also they changed some of the music in the opening, not for the better, because I really liked the initial music. I'm glad they kept the music at the end. I would just like to see more sights of Baltimore, not to please the people in Baltimore, but to just show like how different Baltimore is, like how racially diverse it is, to show that there's like this, like that there is like a sort of like, want for a better term, redneck type area, like just try to show a bit more of the city.
Yeah.
Just things like, so people, so that the long-term fans can get an idea of the world of this show, because obviously they talk in the program about going over here, going in this area, so just to get some more detail. And I think if they were doing it now, that it would be like Game of Thrones. It would have, because fans would be able to search out, they'd be able to easily search out which areas in the city things are taking place, all these types of things that people would want to look up. And you know what they might even do if they were doing it now? They might even have like an app, like where people can go in Baltimore. Oh, this is where the murder was. In the program, those kind of apps.
Well, I do remember that that the where I lived in Baltimore County gets a name drop, but not till next season. But there's one where they go to Catonsville, which is where I lived when I was quite little.
Yeah, but can you imagine how many people would get that? I mean, say, okay, in fact, Jeff, if there was an app which sort of like showed like where everyone was killed in the program, and you had this on your phone, if you had such a phone, would you go to Baltimore just to like see, like it would say, if you go to this place, this is where this episode murder took place, all that kind of stuff?
Well, I already would. If I had the opportunity to make it back to Baltimore at some point, I might visit some things that were filmed on the show if I knew where they were, sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool, like to have it on your phone, because it would like be all geolocation. It's like, drive to here to go to this point where this happened. Yeah,
there's similar things that have been made available at theme parks. Like when I went to Disney World and stuff like that, there were certain things where they would. There was even a game that Morgan played where you had to go to different locations and sort of follow along and try to solve a crime kind of thing. So, could be something similar to that.
I think his hair might be a little longer in this one.
Yeah, I think so. We've had a few hairstyle changes since last season. Some people have grown their hair out more. Some people have cut it shorter.
But I think it makes him look a little less goofy by having it longer.
Pembleton's the only one that someone actually mentioned the hair change, and he said he didn't want people to see the scars on his head and they had to do surgery.
What I noticed is some grey hairs on the actor, so that made me think, oh, how old was he at the time? Because the character's 34, but how old is the actor?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but I think he's a little bit older than that, but not much. But yeah, you can see the difference, because in the first season he had his hair a little bit grown out. It wasn't shaved completely, so you can tell the difference in how he's aged from the first season to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this episode, because except the very good acting from Andre Braugher, and of course part of it is determined by the plot that is not going to be full on, because most of the time you see someone with a stroke, they do the full on, they can hardly do anything, and of course the plot necessitates. Well, he can't be in that state because he's back at work. So, but
right,
the way he did do it was,
they've bypassed that period of his recovery. You know, which is probably good because the focus of the show is on the homicide unit, so they wouldn't want it to just be the Frank show and feature a bunch of stuff outside of him trying to do the job. So that's the focus. I would say there's a lot of opportunities for some, you know, character dynamics in this episode, because we have Munch, you know, who's kind of got it's hard to tell like how much of his attitude toward Frank is actually emotionally based and how much is him sort of trying to be the contrarian because everybody else is kind of taking the, you know, let's be all nice to Frank attitude, and he is kind of looking at it as, hey, you know, we used to kind of rib each other and have, you know, I'm sort of the one who needs to maintain this hard time and not be so easy on him kind of thing. So it's hard to tell exactly how much of that is one or the other, but he sort of fills that role in that he's the one saying, I'm not just going to be kid gloves on Frank, you know, I'm going to remind him of things.
Yeah, that is an example. Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, again, not to spoil anything, but in part 2, you'll see that develop even more, and you'll have some, you know, I think really good scenes with Munch and Frank. So,
I think what it is
go ahead, Rory.
There's a thing in typology with ENTPs, especially in socionics, where they say that they are FI break, so very weak at introverted feeling, and we can say that introverted feeling is, say, nuances of feelings, internal feelings, the ability to empathize with people. And I'm thinking as I'm watching it there with Munch, I'm thinking, you know, you might be right, but this is not the right time. This is not the right time to make these comments.
Yeah, if you think about it, we saw in the episode, you know, Gaffney and Barnfather weren't actually talking to Frank; they were talking to G. So it's really sort of a separate dynamic there. But in terms of people who interacted with Frank, the only two that weren't kind of overboard on the "let's take care of you" kind of thing were really Kellerman and Munch, the ESTP and the ENTP. So it kind of fits what you're talking about in terms of them being the ones that are least likely to sort of tune into that, the feeling of part of it. But Kellerman's not in any way like, you know, he's not like ribbing Pimbleton at all. He's just kind of, you know, matter of fact in his responses, like, no, I wasn't expecting anything, you know. So he's not necessarily super nice to Frank, but he's also not like getting upset with him either. So
yeah,
you know, the contrast in the way that people were responding and how Bayless is pretty much looking at it as his personal mission to make sure that Frank recovers, while everybody else is, you know, taking a little bit of a different attitude about it.
Definitely being a provider genus, in personality, provider, either provider supply or provider protector. But yeah, what I would say is, because bring some typology in that, so folks who have waited all this time for some typology, I would say that ENTPs can be even more socially awkward than ESTPs, just by the fact that 80% of people are sensing types, and so ESTP is a sensing type, so they're going to have more of an idea to talk to people, whereas an ENTP is an intuiting type, and so they can be insensitive and weird, rather than just insensitive. Mm-hmm. And also there's this thing that, and I go along with this with what Kersey wrote. I think he wrote that the ESTP is like the best type when it comes to reading body language. Is that right, Jeff?
Could be.
And I think you said that Morgan is very good at reading body language, but he doesn't necessarily know what caused it, or if someone suddenly changes their body language, what caused it. So he can read the surface behavior very well, but not necessarily the feelings behind it.
Yeah, he has told me that he sort of gets a sense for the feelings of the room kind of thing. And he's more aware of that than I am sometimes. And is affected by it himself, whereas I'm, more detached from that. I mean, I'll notice people's reactions, but I'm not always affected by that the same way.
Right, and that's the thing in, yeah.
I was going to say, I think in this episode, you saw, the struggle with Frank is like not only physically struggling, but mentally he's trying to reassert himself, like just like Howard says, trying to prove he's still a good detective with the limitations that he has.
Yeah.
And over the course of the series with him and Bayless, but I think this is, you really see how much those two care about each other, but it's because he doesn't want to be taken care of.
Yes, that's the thing.
And he's already been dealing with that, for being taken care of by doctors and his wife, in the time that he was off the job, and then he comes back and immediately he's got, the frustration from the authority figure saying, well, he can't go right back to duty. And in the meantime, he's already feeling like his role in the department is, not what he wants to be doing, where he's stuck in the squad room. And then it's like, oh, great, while I'm here, I'm going to have to deal with Bayless trying to take care of me like he's my mother kind of thing. And so he is almost overcompensating for that and kind of pushing Bayless away. But at the same time, you can tell he really doesn't completely want to do that, because he's asking Bayless about his cases. He's interested. He wants to know, and he keeps trying to, get Bayless to give in on the, rules. He's trying to get he's pushing the Guardian and saying, "Come on, let me go with you. Let's find this this suspect, together." So he desperately wants to get back into being not only a full member of the department, but he does actually want to do things with Bayless. He wants to be his partner again, and he can't completely do it. So it's like this frustration of, I can't do what I want to do in this situation, and I have to deal with the part I don't want to, which is Bayless thinking he's got to be taking care of me. So you can feel the tension and the the frustration in him when he tells Bayless, "Kiss my ass," because he's like, he doesn't know what else to say to him at that point, because he doesn't want to, break down crying or anything like that. He doesn't want to show weakness. At the same time, he's extremely upset about everything. And then, of course, when he has to leave, then he's like, he grasps for that one thing he can do where, okay, I'm not allowed to stay in the office the rest of the day, but I'll go to the firing range because I've got to prove I can shoot my weapon and get back, and then, of course, he fails miserably. So, yeah.
I think what I would have done is I would have made. I think, though, that you could say that Munch is right, but his timing's not quite right, because he's pissed off. Because Frank, as he said, he never came to visit Bolander, and also what I would have put in if I was in charge of the program, I would think, hang on a minute. Can we work in a little scene where there's a little bit more of the fact that Munch is a little bit pissed off, or that the fact that because before when Stanley was mentioned, he thought that he was coming back to see him, and now he's retired on him. He's lost his partner to retirement.
And honestly, I would have had either Bayless or Pembleton mention that the reason Frank didn't go to the hospital was Frank was trying to catch the guy who shot him. He was the primary on that case and was trying to. That was how he was doing. How he was showing his, caring about Bolander, as he was trying to solve the crime. Trying to get the guy who shot him.
Yeah, you're right. That should have been mentioned, because then that would have. Because the way it was arranged, it made it look like Frank was more selfish than what he is.
Yeah. And in the same way that Morgan will sometimes mention how he thinks ESTP characters get a raw deal, I sometimes, of course, feel the same thing about ESFP characters. That like, I can think of my favorite soap opera character, Tina, in the scene where she came back and Cord threw a bunch of stuff at her about how she had cooperated with. Basically, I won't try to describe the whole plot, but with somebody that held somebody captive, and she was basically blackmailed into going along with it. And they made it seem as if it was all about how she was trying to get these jewels because she was like selfish and trying to be rich or whatever. But the thing was, it wasn't entirely about that. It was also about her daughter was threatened and she was trying to protect her daughter, and they didn't even mention that. They didn't have her retort that, and I'm like, that was your opportunity to have her say it wasn't just about the jewels. Missed opportunity.
Yeah, and not only would it have been a good thing for the plot, it's like you'd also have to think that is something that the character would have mentioned.
Right. And I think Bayless would have mentioned it when he was defending Frank, but they just sort of played it as he just didn't want to talk about it. But I think, I think he would have stood up for his partner and said, hey, wait a minute, Frank, instead of just saying, I visited Stan, he would have said, hey, Frank was trying to get the guy who shot him.
Yeah, and if I was directing that, I would maybe try and have at least have a close-up of Bayless giving Munch a look that he's pissed off with somebody attacking his partner. Just a bit more of a look, a bit more of a steely look going towards Munch. And out of Bayless's protective nature, because you've talked about not liking it, people criticizing people, when that person is not present, and that gets on your nerves. So I can imagine, although he was flustered a bit by Munch saying negative things. So this is just little things that could have been expanded upon.
Yeah. And I'll just say one behind-the-scenes note is Isabella Hoffman, who played Russert, was pregnant in real life. And which is why she chose to take a leave of absence from the show. And of course, the father of that child was Daniel Baldwin, who she was involved with in real life. Of course, she played Beau Felton on the show. So yeah, that's why they had her run off to France with some diplomat that they never referred to by name.
And the connection to Now Times, folks, is that Daniel Baldwin's brother is now playing Donald Trump, and he might even be on TV tonight.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because NYPD Blue that I've been watching with Morgan has already had multiple episodes that mention Donald Trump since the show started. But
who'd have thunk it?
Anyway.
A billionaire that lives in New York might be maybe mentioned.
Yeah. Usually sarcastically, as someone is, a suspect or something says, when is referring to their lack of finances by saying, I'm not exactly Donald Trump or something like that.
Oh yes, points out of 10.
This one up. Not surprisingly, I give it a 10. Probably doesn't come as a surprise considering how I said this was one of my favorite episodes. So I can't, I could spend hours just talking about all of the scenes in covering Frank's return without even talking much about the hostage stuff, which well done also, and the scenes with Bayless and Munch and the pig stuff, was there wasn't anything to me that just stood out as me saying, well, this is a weak point in the episode. Like I said, the only nitpick basically that I can come up with is a slightly clumsy delivery of the Nash Bridges joke, and it did seem to fit perfectly there. But that's really the only complaint I would have. Otherwise, I thought it was a really good.
Right. I'll give it about an 8 because I like the Andre Braugher stuff. I thought the dialogue was they were trying to get it wittier, but sometimes it felt a little bit too too forced, a little bit too TV dialogue-y. But I'll give it about an 8, especially for the Frank aspect.
All right, well, join us next time for Hostage Part 2, in which I think some things are even better than in the first part, and then a few things are not quite as good. So we'll see how that that shakes out.
All right. Well, I've got to move the
Exciting
right
and dramatic conclusion.
Right. So bye-bye, folks, from me.